Many people have big life questions.
Do we need the royal family? Is Tupac secretly alive? Why won't my pecs grow?
But the only way to find the answers is by speaking to the experts or reading the information. No one has time for that. My name is Rhys James, and I'm not an expert, but my diary is empty. I'll ask the questions you don't think to. I'll get the answers you didn't know you wanted.
They're really, really nice.
I'll do the research. As in Rhysearch. My name is Rhys. It works written down. You're through to Rhysearch. Please leave your name and question, and I'll have an answer for you within 1 calendar week. Beep.
Hello, I've been thinking about education and school and how basically it's turned out that none of the things we learned at school have come up again since, even though they said that they probably would. So I guess I just want to know, like, was it all pointless? You know, is school a waste of time? Do we need it?
A weird old building with a bell where everyone spends all day staring at the clock. No, not Big Ben. School. The Office of Childhood. The ultimate class system. Originally created to help little creeps in shorts and pulled up socks learn to read the Bible while their parents stayed at home, dying of plague, school quickly widened its curriculum to focus on tadpoles and horny kings, later adding even more subjects, like run around for a bit or double fiddle with the gas taps. In the UK, children are legally obligated to attend school, with a select few children chosen to linger just outside the school on a BMX instead, for Atmos. Modern schools are so big, they divide pupils into sets based on dumbness levels, and then score them with letters, creating a sort of kid crufts. But is school of any real-world use anymore, when all the information is available for free on the internet, with jaunty music under it? And why do the kids who say they'll never need maths always end up being correct? To find out, I spoke to Kate Robinson, writer, author, and consultant for education reform, whose school days had such a profound impact on her, she still regularly travels by bus. So, let's begin. Rhys James here. Kate Robinson?
Here.
Now, Kate, did you go to school?
In a sense, yeah.
Sorry, I should have clarified. In the sense of going to a big building that had teachers and whiteboards in it?
For a bit.
Yeah, sorry, should have clarified again. As a child, that's usually when people go.
I did, yeah.
Oh, there we go, got there in the end. And what was it like, Kate, going to school?
I went to school half here and half in America.
That's quite the bus journey.
And I did not get on with it at all. So officially a high school dropout.
Good God.
My biggest issue with the school system in the UK is that it is this one size fits all. We don't give children voice. We don't recognise that they might have different needs and passions. And we judge them all by the same metrics.
So you sacked it off?
Sacked it off, yeah. We didn't have a word for it back then in like 2006, but now we call it unschooling.
Unschooling?
Unschooling. It was a process of sort of defining our own education.
Conscious uncoupling from the education system.
Exactly that, yeah.
Now, what I would say is that unschooling isn't a word, and you'd know that if you'd stayed in school a couple of years longer. I think it'd be more even closer to disschooling.
So when you leave school, you go through a process of deschooling.
Deschooling?
Yeah.
And you didn't fancy reschooling again after that?
Deschooling before you homeschooled. No, we fully unschooled.
And so you just disenchooled yourself. Well, what's the purpose of education supposed to be then? Is it just 14 years of free babysitting?
Do you know different countries define it differently? Places like Canada or Finland, they talk about the purpose of education being to create the well-rounded development of the individual.
And what about in the UK, where we refuse to develop our individuals well-roundedly?
It's almost purely for economic reasons, to create workers for the workforce.
To try and get people the best job possible?
Exactly, yes, by a very narrow set of standards for what counts as the best job possible.
Well, one of the best jobs possible in terms of earnings these days is OnlyFans or being a social media influencer. So is school doing us a disservice by not teaching us how to do TikTok dances or take sexy candids when we're older?
No. But though, if you look at OnlyFans, there's actually a lot of there that actually would be very useful from a school perspective, taking aside the sexy candid pictures part. But they're paying taxes, so it would be good to have some level of accountancy, right? Entrepreneurial skills, running a business, the arts, how to set up lighting.
Yeah, and squatting and wiping down surfaces.
Yeah, right.
But it does sort of feel as if we're taught in a way that prepares us for a world that assumed the 20th century would last forever.
Yes.
You know, at school I was taught, how to write a letter, how to use a paper map and so on, how to do mental arithmetic, mail merge, bark drawings.
Mail merge?
Bark drawings.
So actually this is the whole point, right, is that not everybody needs to know everything. Do we need to focus on how perfect our handwriting is anymore? That to me seems like a massive waste of time.
Yeah.
I remember in school sort of being timed how quickly we could find words in the dictionary.
Yeah, well, how quickly could you find unschooling in the dictionary? Because it isn't in there.
They add words to the dictionary every single year, right? Every year. I've heard worse words.
Kate said the purpose of school in the UK was to set us up to get a good job. But if that's the case, why are we made to say sir and miss when those words are only otherwise used to show someone to their table or ask a customer to leave? And if it's so important, why does Ofsted only judge schools based on their lessons and not catch up with former pupils 10 years later to see how they're getting on, like a boy band reunion show? Let me tell you the story of a boy called Elon. Teachers criticised his inability to concentrate, his poor results, and his scruffy appearance. He had all the hallmarks of a no-hoper. But he also had a keen fascination with computers. That boy was Elon Johnson, who I sat next to in geography. He went on to become one of the most unemployed people I've ever heard of and was last seen trying to negotiate with a stray cat over a Frankfurter, which just goes to show, sometimes teachers' instincts are correct. So why don't we learn critical thinking then, Kate? Is it so we're not smart enough to realise school is a waste of time?
You're right. I mean, we're not taught to critical think, and I think that's one of the big issues with it. You know, the great irony of the fact that we prioritise the so-called academic subjects like maths is that from any time, the skill sets that we've really cherished as a species have been the arts, right? You know, great works of literature, great works of painting.
Great works of breakdancing.
Great works of music.
Great works of sticking bits of pasta to a pencil pot for your parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I think there's a lot of humanities that are learnt from studying stories, right? There's a lot of learning about who we are as a species and how we relate to each other and empathy.
Well, if it's about relating to each other, why do we learn more than one Shakespeare thing? I mean, you read one, you've read them all. He's a weird bloke who barely speaks English and he likes to imagine teenagers kissing. Why is school so obsessed with the fella?
There's a lot of Shakespeare in school.
Yeah, so we should get rid of some of it. I mean, he wrote his weird little things. There's nothing to take from them now because they're all mad and they're wearing stupid outfits, so I can't empathise with these nutters.
Do you know, I grew up in Stratford-upon-Avon.
Well, there you go.
There we go.
Well, Stratford-upon-Avon is basically a perfect example of what I'm talking about with school. Stratford-upon-Avon is full of sort of Tudor buildings,
Yeah.
and then you look and it's just a vape shop.
That's right. Or a Pizza Express.
Yes, exactly.
Is in a beautiful Tudor building.
So isn't that basically what we're doing with school? School is a Tudor building, and the pupils are Pizza Express. It doesn't go together. It doesn't fit. You know, they don't work.
I'm gonna take
No, listen, they just don't mesh.
Absolutely.
Kate, they don't match, for goodness sake.
This is the point, right? Are we educating based on a series of things that were deemed to be useful or impressive in the past?
Yeah, exactly. Like calculators. They're not impressive anymore, are they? I mean, sure, you can type boobs on them, but I literally have a phone in my pocket. I can just type boobs on that.
But that's the point. And so when we talk about education, it should absolutely be an exposure to a wide variety of subjects and things that they might be passionate about. It's about, you can try on different hats, try on different coats, different capes, you know.
Yeah, but what about after we've done drama? Should we at least be able to drop some of the other subjects a bit quicker?
Absolutely. And I think there should be personalised paths through education. In Finland, once you get out of lower school, you can either go the traditional route through education or you can go on a vocational studies course. And either way, when you get to 18, you still have equal opportunities to go to university. There always has been ways to personalise education. There's ways to personalise the system.
Yeah, one thing that's not personalised is all the group sessions singing hymns.
Yeah.
So many hymns.
Non-stop hymns.
Or hers. I mean, I still remember the lyrics to most hymns.
Do you?
I'm sure you remember the lyrics to most hymns.
I do, yeah.
So why are they taking up precious space in my gorgeous brain?
Most of us can remember lyrics to songs. Please don't make me, but I can whip out some Eminem that has no business still being in my brain, but I can do it because it was set to music and rhythm.
Well, exactly. So why don't we at least fill the hymns with useful information for adult life? Autumn leaves when the grass is green, the silk inside a chestnut shell. Imagine if that was useful information about how to put out an oil-based fire, for example.
That would be, or an electric fire, that would be much more useful. No, as opposed to like dance, dance, wherever you may be.
Exactly. It sticks in your brain, those words.
I'm the Lord of the Dance, said he.
Don't use water, put a towel over it. Stuff like that. That would be much better, wouldn't it?
See, that would, and that this is the point.
This
right?
is the point. It's a fantastic point.
I wish so badly I had learnt like how to balance my finances, right? Or taxes, how to navigate death and grief. I wish I had learnt how to do that, you know, how to deal with a mortgage,
Or how to work out when a word isn't a real word. But instead, they waste our time teaching us that hedgehogs are allergic to milk for absolutely no reason.
We teach in a way that never tells us why we're doing it. It's like if you were teaching football and all you did was drills and you never got to play a match. If someone explained to me at the time why we were doing mathematics, why I needed to know what 5 times 5 was, you know, and did it in a way we just got into engineering and all the different ways that maths actually, you know,
25.
is used, that would be much more relevant and exciting as opposed to sit down and do your sums and see me at the end when you screw it all up, which I did.
Kate was right. Schools are weirdly secretive, which you can tell from the fact teachers are constantly holding their fingers to their lips. A major flaw with the current school system is their refusal to tell us why we're learning anything. Often it is not even the information we need, but rather the skill. Singing hymns, for example, isn't so we learn lots of lyrics about fields, but to train us to follow instructions as a group. Chemistry teaches us to always worry that we might have left the gas on. We grow cress, not to enjoy cress, but to learn that sometimes you can put in loads of effort for ages and still end up with something rubbish. And Harvest Festival doesn't exist to teach us about barley. It simply gets us used to an adult life of popping to the food bank. The fact we're not told these reasons could be why 53% of people surveyed in the specific survey I'm referring to right now believe we should change the national curriculum. And 53% is the majority. a fact I learned in maths, while they were pretending to teach me about apples. Kate, do we just learn about Tudors because textbooks are really expensive? And should we just openly teach skills in school instead, rather than facts about kings? Listen, what if we taught medicine? If everyone was taught medicine as a basic subject, then we wouldn't be wasting our doctor's time once we're adults. Because you'd have the knowledge from school to properly self-diagnose, rather than getting on a waiting list for weeks, only to get to your doctor and be told it's just a harmless rash while someone dies of something serious in the waiting room.
No. I think everybody having an MRI machine at home is going to be a bit much, but...
Well, you don't need an MRI machine at home, you just need one at school, in the same way I don't have a Bunsen burner in my house. Or that big weird brown climbing frame you pull out from the wall.
Yeah.
It's just for learning at school, this is how you'd use it if you need to.
No,
But also, you can identify what your ailment is, and then see if you do need to see a real doctor.
I think given most schools are struggling to afford textbooks these days, they might find an MRI machine a bridge too far.
Yeah, well, I've got the solution to that as well.
I'm keen to hear it.
And I'm keen to say it.
Yeah, please come.
Yes, I'm going.
Done, tick.
Now, the way we get the money...
Go ahead and...
Oh my God, the way we get the money for this. Food tech. The meals made by the kids become the lunch served in the canteen. Not only does that save money, that's also the kind of pressure we need, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, it'll make you improve a lot quicker if your classmates are going to bully you if you serve them something disgusting.
You joke, but
I don't joke.
But there is a school, again, in California, and there are several of them. So there's a phenomenon in progressive education called project-based learning or passion-based learning. And there's a school in California, for example, where all of the food is grown on site, and the children are learning things like maths through weighing, how many salad leaves they need for the student body for them. And they do. The food is all grown on site. It's not practical for every single school, but yeah, there's real-life application of the things that you're learning involving kids in the running of the school. Isn't that utopian of a dream?
Yeah, you could even go further. You could teach plumbing, for example. If it's all about making us money in future, why not just save us money in future and I'll never have to hire a plumber?
Never have to hire a plumber.
Or an electrician.
Yeah.
Also, if you're doing electrics at school and learning how to fix and rewire something, if anything breaks, you've got 400 tiny repairmen on site.
But what if you think about the safety implications of giving live wiring to children?
Well, that's not a problem, Kate, if you'd let us study medicine. And then we'd have 400 tiny medics on site as well. In Britain, there are several different types of school, from state schools funded by the government to Catholic schools funded by the Covenants. But one type of school remains a scourge on our society, as it receives absolutely no funding from the government whatsoever, left to stand on its own 2 feet and be paid for by those so hard up they often avoid paying tax entirely. That's right, private schools. A form of education that takes place during a 6-year sleepover in a manor, focusing largely on teaching posture, tutting, and turning up to things extremely overdressed. These schools are so private, they're exclusive. Eton College, for example, admits just 20% of its applicants a year and has a strict policy of no girls allowed, while pricing out some of the boys who call lunch dinner. So what's the appeal? Well, some claim these schools offer a higher standard of education. As such, Eton features such famous alumni as Prince Harry, who was able to retire at just 36, and Bear Grylls, who's so clever he never has to go to the shops, instead opting to eat things off trees and drink his own urine. But Eton isn't the most private of private schools. Some schools are so private they'll only admit 1 or 2 pupils a year and rely on such nepotism pupils must have the same surname and address as the teacher. That's right, homeschool. A school away from school. But is homeschool the solution to the problems of mass education? And how does homeschool homework work when you're already home and your schoolwork is homework to begin with? To find out, I asked Kate Robinson, who soon told me that Caitlin Moran was homeschooled, and so I also spoke to her a bit after, and that'll come up soon if you just wait for a second.
There's a huge movement for homeschooling at the minute. That's a privileged position to be in. Not every family is in a position to be able to homeschool.
Yeah, so if not all families can do it, why don't most families just club together for their homeschooling and hire a big building, and then kids from different families can all go, dress them the same, do a register, possibly with a break for lunch. Is that a good way to do homeschooling?
There's all sorts of platforms to do it. So how that looks can be different for everybody.
Yeah, but if you don't go to school like everyone else does, then you'll be an outcast for the rest of your life. I mean, you won't get references, people will look at you differently, you won't know what pogs are. It's going to set you back.
No, I don't agree. Homeschooling is no longer you and your siblings all dressed in identical clothing in the basement while your mum points at the blackboard. There are lots of successful examples of homeschoolers. Billie Eilish was homeschooled.
Well, we're not going to be able to get her.
Caitlin Moran was homeschooled.
Ah, there we go. Much more realistic. Caitlin, are you there?
You son of a...
You are there. So, Caitlin, tell me.
You massive...
Were you and your siblings all dressed in identical clothing in the basement while your parents pointed at a blackboard?
Pretty much,
Just
yeah.
yes or no?
Yeah, well, they were hippies, so they didn't like getting up at 8 o'clock. They'd like to lie until 10. So it's primarily a scheduling issue for them.
Yeah, just yes or no. And how did parents' evening work then? Did your parents have to keep sitting on one side of the table asking questions, then getting up and running round to the other side of the table to sit down and answer them? or not?
Well, there's two kinds of homeschoolers in the world. There's the ones who look at the proper schooling system and go, if we took our children out of school, we could teach them more. My parents were the second kind of homeschoolers, which are just simply very lazy people who cannot be asked. So not a single lesson in all the time that we were homeschooled. We would get up and we would simply watch television for 12 hours and eat as much cheese as possible.
Does that count as homeschooling then, or just being at home?
I mean, is the word neglect something that you're talking about here? You know, I could say that a lot of sending your kids to a normal school, which I did in the end, kind of is also slightly sort of neglectful, because, like, you know, you're sending your kids away every day to hang out with a bunch of people you don't know and some teachers that you don't know, and they're going to do a bunch of stuff they don't like. And
there's a chance they'll show up on non-uniform day in the same jumper as one of the teachers. So is it best to stay at home then and just specialise and not have to do stuff you don't like?
I think it's genuinely important that you don't make kids who, for instance, hate maths do maths past a certain age. Like I genuinely don't even know my 4 times table. I don't think it's possible for a person to know what 7 times 8 is. And I'm not joking. I have never needed to know what 7 times 8 is. And if you see the kind of kid that is awful at maths, they don't get that language, it doesn't work for them, and you're having to go to school every day and do something that you don't understand and that you fail in, I think that's really psychologically damaging. And the amount of time that you're wasting doing something that you hate, when you could be going on to become even better at something that you love and are genuinely good at.
56. 7 times 8 is 56.
This is witchcraft!
Well, yeah, I went to school. What about assemblies then? Did you bother with them?
Well, this is where it becomes a bit Lord of the Flies. So within a couple of months of us being homeschooled, I had started to hold assemblies with all my siblings, wherein I would get them to confess their sins to me, and then I would have rich blackmail material with which I could manipulate and control them.
Maybe we still could get Billie Eilish.
But again, it's Lord of the Flies at school. I can't help but draw these parallels between the two systems. Kids will just do this shit wherever they are.
And did you make them sing hymns in between blackmailing them?
So I went to school till I was 11. I went to a Methodist school, and I still affirm that Methodist hymns are the biggest bangers yet to hit the charts.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So is that the main thing you miss out on then if you homeschool, or are there others?
The thing that's bad about homeschooling is the social life. Like, for instance, when you get to your teenage years, in order to have a school crush, you're just having to pick one of your brothers or sisters. And that's eggy and dicey.
Well, those are weird names.
From an educational point of view, ironically, it is the best way to teach your kids. Because you go through this process they call deschooling.
Deschooling? What about unschooling? Is that something?
Deschooling.
I knew it wasn't a word.
So basically, if you're in the school system, as all children will know, you're made to do a bunch of stuff that you're bad at, that makes you feel bad. And you lose your natural curiosity. It's stamped out of you. The deschooling process is when you're taken out of school. For about 6 months, any child that's taken out of school to be homeschooled will just do sod all. And then around about 6 months in, you suddenly go, I'm bored. I actually want to do something of my own volition that I will now pursue dedicatedly and wholeheartedly for the rest of my life. So you find out what you're actually interested in, and you never have to tell a child that's homeschooled to do their homework, because they just become obsessed with something and they're up at 3 o'clock in the morning writing a book.
Yeah, fantastic. Cheers, Catelyn. And one final question. How many legs do 7 octopuses have?
I don't know that.
It's 56, and you'd know that if you went to school, and their tentacles. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, that was moving. That was beautiful.
So, Kate, do you think it's weird that mainstream schools divide us by age when people develop at different speeds? I mean, my school was so good that most of the kids in the year below me and the year below that were actually smarter than I was. That's how good the school was.
I mean, yeah.
So should we divide it more by something else, like vibe?
I think that, no, is, but by vibe, no. There is something to be said for evaluating which kids should be together, not only because they're all running at the same pace, actually, but because if you take a kid who's running slower than a kid who's running faster, then the kid who's running faster gets to encourage their peer and help them, and they feel great about themselves because they're setting an example, and the one who's going slower learns from somebody who's
running away from them as fast as they can.
Who's a bit further ahead of them. There's a huge amount of cross-age benefits.
So should we just get rid of all teachers altogether then and have the quicker kids teaching your words, Kate, the slower kids?
Do I think that we should be giving all power to kids in a Lord of the Flies kind of a way? Probably not.
No, you'll end up with weird confession assemblies.
It's a lot of what we do for education is because it makes a lot of sense from an admin organizational perspective, not because it makes any sense for how human beings operate. I think what we should do actually is what other countries do, like Finland.
Oh, Finland, so perfect.
They celebrate the teaching profession, pay them properly, encourage their professional development, give them more autonomy within the system, and allow them to do, because no one gets into teaching for the money, right? So I think there's something to be said for letting teachers live up to their own potential and empowering them to do what they do best, which is help young people develop.
Oh, that does sound good, actually.
Yeah.
But there is this idea now, isn't there, that giving kids validation makes them pursue validation. So if a child gives you a drawing, rather than saying, well done, you're supposed to say, how do you feel about it? So is it not quite damaging to have kids' self-esteem literally tied to the score they get in their grades?
Massively. Yes.
And should we therefore switch to a system where, they do an exam and we say, how do you feel you did?
Yeah.
And whatever they say they got, we just go, yeah, go on then. You got that.
Yes. Yeah, genuinely, I think we should. I think that telling kids you're an A, B, C, or D is massively detrimental because they internalize it and it's how they see it. And, I'm not saying that we should say, how do you feel about that? And they say spaghetti. And we're like, great, you got a spaghetti on your maths report. But I do think that there's a sense of saying, where do you think you could work harder on this? None of this is fantasy either. There are examples of schools around the world who are doing brilliant work in this. So it's not rocket science, personalizing education. You just treat children as people. As opposed to units of data.
People.
They're little people.
They are. They're like grown-ups, but they are just significantly smaller.
Yeah.
And they're not as clever as grown-ups, but I suppose that's what school's for.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, but grades are useful for getting a job, aren't they? Because, companies, KPMG and whatnot, they don't have time to work out whether you're a thicko, so it's good to have a little score.
Interestingly, a lot of companies are actually changing the way that they hire, and a lot of companies are now moving away from looking at things like GCSE and A-level results, and they're looking more at the individual, because they're finding that they're hiring these people who can't think for themselves.
So it's actively to our detriment how we're taught then, if we can't get a job off the back of it. So is it unfair that grown-ups decide all of this, and should we just let kids choose how they're educated?
Yeah, I think that it would be useful to check in with kids when they leave a class at the end of the year to be like, how was your experience with that teacher? Maybe some written feedback and take their feedback on board.
Now, if I was a teacher who was worried about written feedback, I'd probably just not teach the pupils to write correctly so they couldn't slag me off.
And not for the first time in this conversation, why I'm glad you're not in charge of the next generation, Rhys.
Oh, you think I wouldn't do a good job? You think I wouldn't make a good teacher?
No, if you're going to go ahead and screw
So
them
maybe
up
we
on
don't do written feedback, but instead we do what they do outside a public toilet where they have those little buttons with smiley faces on of varying degrees, so you can choose how happy the toilet made you.
Maybe that's it, yeah.
Pop them in schools outside every classroom.
Exactly, done.
Then again, if I was at school and I caught someone pressing the big smile...
Would you be chuffed?
No, I think they're getting bullied. I think people are looking at that and going, "You absolute weasel."
Like you absolute narc.
Yeah. So there you go. It's you're back at the
We're
same
back
problem.
at the same problem. All right. Well, maybe go the old-fashioned route of having conversations with kids.
Okay, what's your name and how old are you?
I'm Milo and I'm 10 years old.
Juno, 7. 4.
Yes, and what's your name?
Luna.
Thank you. It's Lula. You're 4. And do you go to school?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, sometimes.
Right then. What do you learn?
We learn maths, art, and we also learn PE and literacy and humanities and well-being.
And do you like doing lots of subjects, Juno?
Yeah, because I want to learn lots of things, not just one thing.
And how about
I
you?
like art and well-being,
Any subjects you don't like?
and I like maths.
Right, so you like them all, really?
I like them all, really.
Yeah, say that
Just
then.
some are a bit, like, sometimes maths and literacy and humanities can sometimes be a bit boring.
Right, so you actually don't like any of them and they're all boring then, except for art?
Sometimes it is, because we do a lot of reflecting and...
Reflecting?
Yeah, we do something fun and then we need to write a big 9-page thing about it
9 page?
with green pen.
Green pen? I think your art teacher's been sending me letters. Have you got anything to say, Lula? Or are you just focused on those chicken nuggets?
No.
What about your teachers then? Any good or a strict old bunch of chumps?
Well, I don't really mind if they're strict, because sometimes it might be better for me because I do chat a lot in my class.
So you wouldn't want the opportunity to vote your teachers out? Or maybe give them a score from sad face to smiley?
No, because I like to see in lots of different ways where people try different ways of teaching and stuff.
But if you voted on, like, which teachers you wanted to get sacked, school would probably be better.
Oh, we've got a little Lord Sugar over here. Do you think it would also be better if they taught you how to do stuff like rewire a plug so you don't have to phone any electricians when you get older?
Don't really want to learn how to do that, but I'd probably learn that from my family. I'd probably get some instructions or something.
Yeah, I guess that's why they invented things like scouts and stuff, to learn those things. I guess school is sort of more like academical, isn't it?
Well, so what do you wish they taught you then?
Well, it would be good if they made it a bit more interactive with, like, proper life skills, like making fires and plumbing and tying knots and stuff and climbing.
Yeah, sounds like scouts to me. Christ. Listen, how would you improve school then, Juno?
I'd want to wear whatever I want.
Christ.
Cozy clothes.
Cozy clothes.
Yeah.
And what about you, Lula? Any ways to improve school?
Stay at home.
Stay at home? Doing what? Learning?
Watching TV.
For goodness sake.
But I think if you were at home, there wouldn't be, like, loads of rules because there wouldn't be loads of children.
Well, I like being around lots of other children because I'd be thinking about what I'd be missing out on.
Well, you'd probably be missing out on singing songs about harvest.
Yeah, oh yeah, the harvest.
Do you do hymns?
We do lots of singing.
Sometimes people from church come and we have to like say a hymn and stuff.
Yeah, and have you ever heard the word unschooling? Do you think that's a real word?
I think it's a made-up word.
Do you think it's a real word? Kate Robinson thinks it's real.
Oh, I wish it was, but unschooling, no.
And what about you, Lula? And what do you all want to be when you grow up then?
A superstar.
Oh, superstar, that's cute. Still going strong on those nuggets.
They're really, really nice.
And what about you guys then? What do you want to be?
I'm not really sure.
Fair enough.
Either a writer, because I've kind of thought about it a bit, because I know it's quite hard to become an actress, so I thought maybe I could be a writer.
That's incredibly realistic of you. Well, you've got an opportunity here, Juno, with the nation listening, to show us your writing chops. Have you got anything stunning and poignant to say?
We can all share our inner beauty with something as simple as a smile.
Holy Mother of God.
Whatever.
Juno, Milo, Lula, cheers. How'd you guys know each other, by the way?
Like, I'm not being biased,
And I
but
love getting...
Yeah, okay, shush now. Kate, one final question. Why don't more people want to sort school out then? Can't be asked.
What we notice in that is the mentality of it, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. It doesn't apply here because it is broke and we are leaving millions of kids behind. It's that quote of it's easier to build up a child than it is to fix a broken adult. And there are so many people coming out who actually need to recover from their education and the long-lasting damage it's done.
I had learned a lot from Kate, Caitlin, Juno, Milo, and to an extent, Lula. I had learned that Stratford-upon-Avon has a Pizza Express, that we can share our inner beauty with something as simple as a smile, and that there actually is such a word as unschooling, it turns out. I don't know why I got so weird about that. But most of all, I had learned that the one-size-fits-all school system exists for a purpose that's outdated and that it no longer even achieves. The way I see it, we have two options. We can move to Finland, where they encourage the creative individuality of both pupils and teachers, but it is freezing and I don't really like their weird chewy bread. Or we could completely overhaul school as we know it, but that would be difficult when the current school system is so embedded in us from school. It would be a long road to fix it. But in the meantime, we could make one improvement, and that is to take what we already have and fill it with something we might genuinely use as adults.
I left on the oven when I was drunk. I was in the other room without my dad or my mum, and I came down from upstairs and I saw all the smoke. At 10 to 10 I began to choke. Fast then, wherever you may be, dampen a tea towel frantically and smother the flames with it delicately, and the next time get a delivery.
So, Kate, how would you judge my performance there?
How do you feel about it?
Probably middle smile.
There we go.
There you go.
Really nice.